If I took over your paid advertising for a full 30 days, here's exactly what I do first. Whether you're already running ads and you're getting inconsistent results, or you're looking to build a paid acquisition system that actually compounds, this is what I'd look at. I want to be straight with you before we get into it. I've worked with over 60 businesses inside of financial services, tech, B2B consulting, and I've seen up close what works, what doesn't, and what breaks systems completely. And I've run this exact sequence inside of my own business. But watching a video does not build a business, implementing does. So watch this video, take what's useful, apply it, and get rid of the rest. Here's what I'd fix and the order I'd fix it in. So in the last 6 months, I've run a revenue experiment. I ran the exact same funnel 2 times over an 8-week test time horizon. In the first period, which was between August and September of 2025, I ran my advertising funnel. I booked 32 meetings and I closed 5 clients at a customer acquisition cost of around $2,000. In the second period, between January and February 2026, I booked 24 meetings and closed 5 clients with this exact funnel. Fewer calls, the exact same closes, and a cost of acquisition of $1,800, which is just $200 less. But the biggest difference was the cash collected. That means the revenue and profit increased 3.25 times. It's because we had similar net margins and lower acquisition costs. And I did this entirely inside my own business. Now, if you don't know me, my name is Isaac Wood. I build and run paid advertising strategies for businesses who want more qualified leads and to close more customers. We've worked with over 60 clients across financial services, tech, B2B consulting niches over the last 5 years, and we've helped generate thousands of qualified leads and sales appointments. And I make these trainings with the insights that I've learned, helping me, my own business, and my clients generate more revenue into their businesses. So back to the results. What changed between period 1 and period 2? 4 things in a very specific order, and that order is what this video is about. Before we get into it, I want to name something that most people who run paid ads won't say out loud. Most advertisers, they want to control the ad. They write the creative, they manage the ad account, they'll report on the spend, and ultimately, that's their job and they do it. But don't get me wrong, ad creative is one of those things that's one of the most important parts of any advertising campaign. It's exactly what gets your customer to click, and we do spend a lot of time making good ad creative. But the journey that your customer takes after they've actually clicked, which is the messaging, the trust, the follow-up system, that's usually the afterthought with most advertisers. And that's the gap between the click and the close, which is exactly where most paid acquisition systems break down. So if your campaigns are running or you aren't getting consistent results or you haven't done this yet, it's probably not your ads yet. It's the sequence underneath them. And so there are 4 steps to fixing this. And if you're skipping any of them or doing them in the wrong order, more spend is not going to help you. It's just going to produce the same inconsistent results faster. So let's go through these step by step. So there are 4 things I would fix in a very specific order. And that order matters way more than most people realize, because doing step 4 before you fix step 1 is exactly why most paid acquisition systems don't compound at the rate that you want them to. Most businesses go straight to more reps, more creative, more spend, and they wonder why their results aren't consistent. So the answer is almost always upstream. So let's start at the beginning. Pillar 1, messaging. When I ask most business owners what they do, they tell me their service. I do financial services, I build AI agents, I run email marketing campaigns. And look, that's fine as a starting point, but it's not an offer. And there's a big difference between a service and an offer. An offer is not a service. A service is what you do. An offer is the result that you can get your client when they decide to work with you. Your buyer doesn't need or want another thing that they have to babysit and manage themselves. They want a dream outcome. They want to know exactly with specificity what their situation looks like after working with you. And if your messaging can't answer that in 5 seconds or less, you're either not going to get the click, or worse, you're going to get the click and it's the wrong type of customer. All messaging builds around your ideal customer, and this is the main person whose problem you solve. You deliver them an outcome in a time frame, and that is your offer. Once you have that, everything else lines up behind it. Your headline, your landing page copy, your follow-up emails, and all the content will support your offer and move your ideal client that much closer to making a decision. And the keyword here is ideal. Your messaging needs to speak to the in-market buying demographic, and these are the people who can actually afford your offer, and they will get the most benefit in working with you. Now, if you speak to low-level businesses or out-of-market buying demographics, you're going to get lower conversions. You're going to get people who simply can't afford you, or you're going to get buyers who are trying to negotiate your price down, ultimately causing a pipeline that might look full, but it's just not profitable in the way that you want it to be. And so it's an unhealthy loop, and it's hard to get out of once you're inside of it. I'm going to go through a case study now that's talking about our messaging. We're going to go before and after. So in our first period, our messaging spoke to anyone who wanted more leads. Sounds reasonable, right? Everybody wants more leads. The problem is everybody wants more leads. That means people with no real businesses, people only looking for rev share deals that aren't willing to put any skin of their own in the game, people who just booked a call to see what it's about. There's no buying intent necessary. Companies with no online presence, or entrepreneurs who are people that simply just want to start a business, right? Our calendar was full, and a lot of these people slipped through the cracks. And as a result, our revenue did not reflect it. So after, we changed our messaging. So that means we specifically are speaking to businesses who have unpredictable revenue, who are already doing well. They had a sales team, but they wanted to add on another reliable acquisition channel, whether that's diversify their existing channels or just get another person who can help them generate more leads so they can grow even more, right? When I did that, something interesting happened. Fewer people booked on the call, but the ones who did were completely different. They weren't asking why it costs, what it costs. They were not just shopping around. They already knew that they had a problem worth solving. They showed up to calls and they asked how we work and ultimately how we could start. It's the same funnel. Messaging was the tweak. Completely different quality of conversation, completely different type of buyer was even coming to the call, right? We had higher level business owners that were just taking calls with us, more salespeople. The initial calls were with solopreneurs or people with one salesperson. We ended up getting calls with companies who had 50 or more sales reps. Even in addition to that, like an indication was the system that they had. A lot of these companies, when I first started, they had small systems or no systems at all. They were just using Google Sheets, which is completely normal if you're just getting started. But, in moving up market, you want to work with companies that have bigger systems. Bigger systems, better systems means more leverage. So you can do the same exact level of work and create that much more impact. And so, these bigger companies were coming through. They had dialed in systems, CRMs. They even had administrators for those CRMs. And so as a result, they're just that much more qualified and they can make that much bigger orders. So the messaging is what decides who walks through that door, right? And when the buyer improves, every single metric downstream will improve with it. Our close rate, our deal value, our speed to close, all of it gets easier when the right people are in the room. So here's what to do. Stop describing your service and start describing a specific result that they can get. Get specific about the situation that your client is already in. So what that means is you want to understand their desired circumstances, their current pains that they're living in right now. You want to know what they actually want to achieve. Call out the right buyer and be explicit into who is not a fit. This can be counterintuitive by repelling people who are not a good fit and telling your audience, hey, if you are bad fit 1, bad fit 2, bad fit 3, then you should not be watching this. You're going to lower your view counts, but you're going to increase the the intent of your viewers, and you're going to be more specific in who's actually going to be continuing to watch that. So for example, these videos, I'm wanting people who have big sales teams, actual CRMs, actual systems in place so they can actually close the deals and generate the leads that me and my company help them generate, right? So you want to be direct. Every single market is sophisticated in 2026. Everyone has been burned at some point by someone who's overpromised something. Buyers can smell a shady pitch a mile away. They can smell it through your computer screen. Being clear about who you're for, what you do, what it costs, including pricing, is very important. And what happens next is a trust signal in a world of vague promises. So one positioning change in your messaging, and you can improve everything else that follows down the line. Next pillar, content. So here's something that happened to me recently that I think about a lot. I got on a sales call with a prospect who I've never spoken to before. 5 minutes in, they said, "I feel like I already know you." They had watched just 3 of my videos before the call, but they'd see me explain my thinking, break down my thought process, talking through real life examples. By the time we spoke, they weren't evaluating if I knew what I was doing. They had already seen the evidence that I was competent. They were just figuring out if I was a fit for their business. And that's the power of video content. It builds trust at scale. So video content builds a relationship with your viewer before you ever meet them. This is called a parasocial relationship. They see you, they hear you, they put a face to a name and a voice to a face. They hear you think through problems and how you actually solve them. And they start to believe you can do what you claim. And in some cases, like on that call, they start to feel like they even know you. The most effective version of this for a business who's running paid ads is a direct video sales letter. This is called a VSL. So this is not just a talking head short where you have someone saying generic things about your industry. This is a video that hooks your viewer in. It shows proof of why you can deliver. It makes your offer crystal clear, and it gives them a very specific next step. And here's the most important thing that people get wrong when they try to make this kind of content. They try to educate their market about their solution. Don't do that. It's much easier to sell something to people who already want a solution than to educate your market into your solution. So the way that you do that is by establishing pain up front and establishing your solution as a way to solve their pain. So the insights that you need in order to make great content are well available. The best way to do this is just look back to your best customers, your existing customers, and see the questions that they asked before they bought, the objections that they raised, the language that they used to describe their problem. That's going to be your script, or at least the basis for it, and use that. So before dialing in the content system, I had some content and even a VSL, but the overall process was not dialed in. I wasn't controlling the narrative in a consistent way. And as a result, our sales calls, they were colder, they closed at a lower rate, and I was just collecting less cash up front. The leads were showing up, they were more skeptical, they were more beginner, or a combination of both. Then we built our content system properly. By the time we started our second iteration of the funnel, we had a content library that was doing real selling work before anybody ever hopped on a Zoom call. The leverage that content provides, specifically video content provides, is hard to overstate. You make something one time and then you can recycle it basically in unlimited times and share it to every single person in your niche. And here's specifically what we built. We made a video sales letter that spoke directly to my target audience, breaking down their top pain points and how to solve them with my offer. This is seen before the lead ever booked a meeting with us. Then we created a 10-minute Loom video walkthrough that was going through our exact process. This is more details on the pain that they're facing, what they've already tried, how it works, what results they can expect, and the pricing. This was a more in-depth demo compared to the video sales letter, and this is seen before they actually join the call. We also include an in-depth 1-hour-long masterclass that gives our client the entire playbook that we use to get results. So this covers exactly what we do, how we do it, how they could help, how they could do it themselves if they theoretically wanted to do so. This got shared throughout the sales process as nurture. We also will use it in follow-up after. We can splice it up. We can send snippets and and reference certain parts of the content or the masterclass to leads, speaking to the specific problems or pains that they mentioned throughout the sales process. The result of this video content was so clear. Leads arrived at the call pre-educated. They watched the videos. They understood the process. They'd seen us explain our thinking. And we did that in a way that matched exactly with what they were experiencing in their business. So the calls were different. They were shorter. They were more direct. Prospects weren't asking those basic questions about what do you do and generally how it works. They were asking specific questions. They came in knowing their numbers and they had a clear buying process. And so the time to lead from the time that it took from lead to close was also faster by over a week. And so that shift from colder calls to warmer conversations didn't necessarily come from better sales scripts. It came from content that helped set the frame and did the selling before we even had a Zoom call, right? That ultimately also helped improve the show rates because they had more reason to actually show up to the call. We went from sub 70% show rates to over 80% show rates in the second round of the funnel. So the insight here is that content turns cold traffic into warm conversations. Your team stops spending the first half of every single call explaining what you do to a skeptical lead, and it starts spending the time actually understanding their business and helping them make the best decision for their business. So to do this, start with one piece of content that directly answers the most common objection your best clients had before they actually bought. You want to hook them in with their pain, show proof you can solve it, promise them a clear outcome, and then give them a plan to get there. Make it searchable, title it around what your best buyers are already searching for. Something like how to achieve X result with Y mechanism in 2026. Cross-post it everywhere. Put it on YouTube, put it on LinkedIn, Instagram, wherever your ideal customer lives or spends time. And build it around your offer, your proof, your process, and just let it run. And watch how it improves the quality of the conversations with your leads when those prospects have already seen from you, they've heard from you, they've heard your voice before they ever meet you. Pillar 3, proof. I want to tell you something that I don't think gets said enough because most people online only show the highlight reel. When I was first starting out, when I had very few logos and just small name brands that nobody had ever heard of, my closing rate as a result was worse. My deal sizes were smaller and I was just dealing with smaller fish. And smaller fish, honestly, are more of a pain in the ass to work with. They're needier, they expect more of you, and are just harder to get really good results for. And so typically that means more objections, more tire kicking, more let me think about it calls that end up going nowhere or just ghost. Because when there's no proof, your buyer thinks that they're carrying all the risk and people don't like carrying that risk. So when you're selling to cold traffic, whether that's through ads, through cold outreach, your buyer is going to be skeptical by default. They've been burned before and they've been promised the world by someone who delivered nothing, right? They need to believe that you can do what you say you can do before they'll trust you with their budget and actually giving you money. And here's what I've learned. Proof doesn't just help you close more deals, it changes who you're closing. So once I started showing proof everywhere throughout my process, that means logos and client results, speaking to specific outcomes, detailing processes, very specifically, something shifted. I had more confidence on my own calls. My team had more conviction, and the quality of the buyer that we were starting to attract really was changing. So you have to sell hard at the beginning when you build up. There's everybody who's been there, when you're first starting, you really just need to hustle. You need to grind it out and just go from 0 to 1. But once you start to have that proof, you have real specific verifiable proof, you can start to go up market. And going up market really does change everything. It's not enough to have case studies that nobody reads. Proof needs to show up before anybody asks for it, right? In your ad, on your landing pages, in the follow-up sequences, and what they find when they do Google searches on you. They look you up inside of ChatGPT or Perplexity or in Claude. Like, you need to show up and you need to show up positively. And in terms of the actual results, it needs to be specific. So here's what happened for this specific type of business in the specific situation. Here's that specific outcome. Specificity is what separates the proof that actually builds trust from the typical slop that just gets ignored. So in terms of our case study here, for proof, in our first period, we had some results that we could point to, but the proof wasn't showing up as consistently as it should at every single stage. It wasn't necessarily in the ads and it wasn't as visible on the landing page. It just didn't have as many logos. And it wasn't woven into the follow-up sequence nearly as well. And so sophisticated buyers, they've seen the pitch, they've been burned. Without proof showing up, they're just going to be more skeptical. We're asking them to take our word for it. And if you're just saying, hey, take my word for it, some will take the bait, but a lot of people will not. So in the second phase of our funnel, we just had more logos. We brute forced ourselves into stronger case studies. We now had metrics from client results that we can actually refer to on the calls that allowed us to verify and validate the claims that we were making. It also gave us just like a track record that we can lean to and we could point to and say, hey, this is what we're doing right now. This is how the client results are. These clients look like you. Therefore, it's going to work for you as well, right? The right buyers, the ones that are worth closing, they're often going to be skeptical. They've seen this pitch. And again, they've been burned, like I keep saying. But the big result from all of this, adding more proof, was simply the improved closing rate. So before we were closing at around 15%, and now we were closing at 21%. And in addition to that, we also increased our order size by 3.25 times. We're also increasing our profit by the same amount, right? But still, 6% increase in sales over a year is a substantial number of new revenue and more profit at a 3.25 increase in revenue per order, right? And so proof rapidly removes skepticism from your buyer. So the insight here is buyers don't want to be first, right? They want to see that someone who looks like them has already made this work, right? The most obvious example is nobody ever got fired for buying IBM, right? That's very far end of the spectrum, but the concept remains the same, right? Nobody's heard from you. You're going to be higher risk. They want to just save their neck. They want to make sure that they're not going to lose their money. So people are going to potentially be people are going to be more risk averse, right? So when proof actually shows up before they ever ask for it in the ad on your landing page and what they find from you when they're doing their own research, you stop asking them to take that leap of faith and you start giving them a credible reason to decide to go with you. If your best potential client Googled you right now, right after seeing your ad, what would they find that makes them more comfortable? Or would they be more skeptical in finding that you don't actually exist online? So that answer tells you exactly how much work this pillar needs. So to do this, just put one specific verifiable result in front of cold traffic before they ever see a pitch. Give them a hard number, a hard specific outcome, a before and an after state. So make it visible, make it findable, and then just make sure it shows up consistently, right? So in your ads, on your landing page, and in everything that they see between the click and the close, just make sure that you're reinforcing that social proof. Make sure you're just giving them the results consistently over time, and you will see your close rate increase. Pillar 4, follow-up systems. Most businesses don't lose their deal because of the landing page or the sales call, but they lose them because they are silent and they have lost the conviction of the buyer. Here's the typical pattern. Lead comes in, they book, you'll get the call, they'll get some generic confirmation email or like an automated text or some kind of automated email. They show up cold, they might not even show up at all. They'll ask some questions. They say, hey, let me think about it. And then they ghost with you. Your rep spends 30 minutes on the call, 20 of which they were just explaining exactly what it is you do. That's not a sales problem. That is a system problem. There's no framing, there's no proof, and there's no momentum built into that window between booking and call. And so by the time that your prospects actually show up, the excitement and the conviction that they had in your solution has faded. And so that goes down. And if it doesn't get to the level that they need it to be, then you're going to get a higher no-show rate. And so this is where most paid acquisition systems bleed out, and it's completely fixable. There are 4 components that close the loop on everything you've built in steps 1 through 3. There's the thank you page. This is the framing tool. This is not just a confirmation page. The moment that someone books in, they are the highest intent moment in your entire funnel. And so you want to use this moment and you got to capitalize it. So set the agenda, give them micro commitments, start building the belief before your team ever says hello. So what we like to do here, include videos that answer their frequently asked questions. Those are called breakout videos. You want to include a 72-hour pre-call flow. And this is a standard sequence of emails that goes out before you actually hop on the Zoom call with them. And so these are going to be plain text, they're conversational, they're speaking to your client results. And so this is going to be your proof, right? So each one is covering one specific thing. And what I mean by one is one email, one item, one thing, right? Talk about their pain, your differentiation, what's going to happen on the call, the proof from a client who looks similar to them, right? The 5-minute rule is an absolute no-brainer. It's super simple. Speed wins trust, and whoever responds first usually frames the deal, right? So in a market that's full of generic automation and AI sequences and just nonsense, a fast, personalized human response stands out more than any clever message ever will. So just make sure that you're following up and you're doing a personalized touch within 5 minutes. So the last one here is a long-term value-based follow-up. And so because most businesses will chase hard for just 72 hours before and after the call, and then they'll go completely silent, the thing that you need to focus on is just that long-term. So what that means is the leads that don't convert immediately, just continue to follow up with them until ultimately they say yes or they say no. So the follow-up case study, in the first period, before we had the system fully dialed in, it was basically automated reminders. We had an automated system that was sending out some emails, and the occasional piece of shared content. Nothing systematic, nothing consistent, no framing between the booking and the call, and no structured sequence. No human touch in the first 5 minutes. And so leads would book, we'd follow up, but they would go colder, right? So show rates as a result were inconsistent. And when people did show up, they arrived with low context and high skepticism. So we were starting every single call from zero, re-explaining what we do, rebuilding trust that should have already been there. The result, 32 calls, 5 clients closed, and a $2,000 cost per client acquisition. The calendar looked full, but the conversations told were a different story. So afterwards, when we build the system properly, which means we include the framing page, which is the success thank you page, the 72-hour flow, the human response, the long-term nurture, something simple happened. More people showed up, and the ones who showed up did differently. They already knew what the call was about, they had seen the proof, they understood the process, and they weren't there to just evaluate, they were there to make a decision. The result, 24 calls booked, 5 clients closed, $1,800 cost per acquisition, and this is the big kicker, 3.25 times more profit per customer. So fewer calls, same closes, a fraction of the wasted conversation. And that's what a follow-up system actually buys you. Not more activity, but a better use of the activity that you're already doing. So the insight here is most businesses treat follow-up as a last resort. This is something that you do when the deal goes cold, but the businesses that are winning right now in 2026 have figured out that follow-up is where the deal is really made. Not on the call, not on the landing page, but between every single key touch point or call, you got to be continuously following up. And so fill each touch with value, and you'll stop losing those deals that you should have converted in the first place. So the way to do this is build the system in order. So you fix your thank you page this week. It takes an hour. It's the highest leverage change you can make right now. Make a couple videos solving your clients' key questions, their FAQs, add the 72-hour flow, set up a 5-minute response automation, just notifying your team, hey, a new booking is in, just shoot them a text, and then start creating content that teaches something genuinely useful to your ideal buyer. You've been watching this and you recognize in your own funnel what I'm describing. Calendar has some meetings, but the revenue and profit is not where it needs to be. It's a sequence problem and it's fixable. We do a free 30-minute audit where we look at all 4 pillars: your messaging, your content, your proof, and your follow-up systems. We tell you exactly where it's leaking and the highest leverage point to fix first. If that's useful to you, then book a call at the link in the description below. Otherwise, I'll see you in the next video.